Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking through a new project that we have going on right now that I am just in the beginning stages of defining, and it represents a shift that I'm taking in my career. For those who don't know, I'm Steven Rosenthal. I built two businesses over the past 5 years. One we sold to a strategic buyer that I'm still very much involved in supporting. And then the other business I bought in 2021 is a software company. Bought it from my dad and his business partner. It's a turnaround business. That business he was losing a ton of money, and we 12x'd enterprise value of that business and exited to private equity in the summer of 2024. Since then, for 13 months now, I have been operating as a hired gun CEO for the private equity firm that bought us out, and working on what the next phase of my career is going to look like. Started out in 2020, the week before COVID shutdown was the first Monday that I was on my own payroll. I started as a sales consulting business, spun out a marketing agency out of that sales consulting company, and that's the one that we sold to a strategic buyer. So it's a little bit of the background over the past 5 years, Cliff Notes version. And since those sales last year, I have been figuring out what this next phase of my career is going to look like and what I'm going to focus on. And I'm starting to get some clarity. Spent a decent amount of time over the past probably 6 or 7 months, maybe a little more, working through a concept. In the financial world, this whole concept is called independent sponsorship. It's basically the process of buying a minority, majority, or entire stake of a business, and as an individual, utilizing your own playbook, checkbook, phone book to help grow that business, as opposed to, private equity firm that raises a fund and then goes and buys up businesses under a specific thesis, looks to most of the time put a ton of debt against those businesses after the purchase, and then usually looks to flip those businesses, call it 3 to 5 years, sometimes 7. It's also different than a holdco, something like a Tiny Capital, Berkshire Hathaway, or the company that I sold to, Big Band Software. Holdco looks to buy majority or entire business and just let that thing operate and churn off a ton of profit. And as I've learned in this space, there is kind of a continuum between these three ideas. There's also, public markets where it's a publicly traded company. There's privately owned businesses with a variety of different types of cap tables or ownership structures. And as far as I know, that's the mix of what business ownership looks like. All that to say, this next project and the thing that I'm investigating right now is this independent sponsor track. Had those two liquidity events is what they call them, basically where you pull out a lot of the value that you've created in a business through cash. Liquidity event could be a sale, usually is some sort of sale of minority, majority, or an entire part of your business. So after having those liquidity events, after building my network of people in business, after operating for 5.5 years as a business owner, I've built up the checkbook, phone book, and playbook to jumpstart another phase of my career. It was so interesting. Before I sold these businesses, I really had one, maybe two resources at my disposal. In the early days, the only resource that I had was my time and my grit, and that resource provided a limited number of opportunity to target and a limited number of opportunity vehicles to execute my resource against. So on what opportunity was I spending my time? And I've found that now, with some of the changes that have happened over the past, 20 months, January 2024 to today, there's been more resources available to me now than what I had back in January of 2020. Now there's more resources. That's led me to determine how do I structure my career in this next season. So that's really the business side of this decision making. The determination of what I'm going to do from the business perspective. The other thing thing that I've learned over the past 5 years is it is okay and it should be encouraged to allow outside influences into your decision making in business, which me as a younger entrepreneur would have really cringed that I just said that, that you should allow other outside influences to determine your steps. But I've learned that you really shouldn't just let the market decide what opportunities you're going to go after. And the influences that I'm specifically talking about is my family. I've got 3 children now, 4, 2, and 5 months and a couple days here. I've got my wife, have a great church that I'm a part of, that I'm invested in, and over the past few months I've really dove deep into what it looks like to allow my faith to permeate fully into my life as a businessman. And it's been on my mind. It's been something that I've attempted to integrate since I started this journey, but that concept, that priority, that mission, and that focus have started to solidify way more so recently. And I think I can move with more confidence now than I did before. I think I was afraid to, I had another guy that's a strong Christian who's just starting a business tell me via email the other day. We looked at the structure of what I'm trying to build here in my independent sponsorship and some of the priorities I laid out in a deck and how I'm planning to target this goal. He mentioned to me that he found it very inspiring, and he said that he wanted the same for his business that he's starting, but he was afraid to be so overtly, Christian about it, or religious, as many people who don't have a background in the faith call it, because he didn't want to limit the customers that he could do business with. And I totally understand that. I've been in that boat. I've been in that line of thinking. I think now I'm less worried about it, about limiting who I'm going to do business with. I think the Lord will guide and direct that, and I think I'm being called right now to being way more overt about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to glorify the Lord, and I want that to be my sole aim and focus with this next season. I think glorifying the Lord, Tim Keller's book, Every Good Endeavor, really helps paint a picture of what that means. And I think, one thing that really stuck with me was when he said, making a career decision is evaluating the talents, skills, and opportunities that you have and choosing what will serve others best. And that's his recommendation for how to decide what career you're going to focus on, what job you're going to have. So Heritage Rose, that's the name of the next season, next target that I have in my career. And that's what I'm going to be focused on.